Hello everybody, this is Schmoopy909 and this is Let's Code in C. In this episode we'll be going over conditional statements. Now what is a conditional statement and why is it useful? Well, conditional statement is a statement that will let you branch your code off depending on different inputs, which is very useful because depending on what cases you have, there will be different kinds of things that you want to execute. A simple example would be if a number is even, then you want to do something to that number, but if the number is odd, you want to do something different to that number. Or let's say you're doing some type of simulator and someone is driving home, and if they do not have milk in the fridge, they will stop at the grocery store to get milk. If they do have milk in the fridge, they will not stop at the grocery store to get milk. Alrighty. So what we're going to go over is the if statement, the else statement, and the switch statement. Let's start off with the if. Okay. And we're also, as we're doing the conditionals, we have to go over the conditional operators. So let's just start off with an if statement. Let's say one is 5. Okay. Now, to do an if statement, we just type if, okay, open and close parentheses, and inside is what goes our if, our little condition that we want to check. So we can say if int1 equals equals, and equals equals is a conditional operator which checks if this variable is equal to a value or another variable that we give it. Okay, and this will either return in C it's 0 if it's false, and anything else if it's true. So let's say if int1 is equal to 5. Okay. Now you're probably thinking, oh, we put a semicolon at the end of this. That is not so. With an if statement, there is no semicolon. Instead, just like the main function here, we open curly brackets and close curly brackets. Now what happens here is if this evaluates to true, then the if statement will come in here and execute some code that we have in here. If it is not true, it'll just skip over the code in our brackets. Okay. So let's say if int1 is equal to 5, then we'll just change int1 to equal 0. Okay. So let's print this out and see what the answer is. Now looking at this, we know int1 is 5. This should evaluate to true. It should jump in here, make int1 0, and then we should get a value of 0. Let's compile this. And there we go. We get a value of 0. Now let's say, check that this is equal to 1. Now, knowing what I just said about if statements, this will evaluate to false. It will skip over this, not change int1, and int1 should remain to be 5. And there we go. We have 5. Okay. Now we're going to go over a couple more logical operators that are very useful, like the not equals to. This is the not equals to operator. It's an exclamation point with a little equals at the end, and this says if int1 is not equal to 1. Okay, so we know int1 is not equal to 1, so this should evaluate to true. Should change int1 to 0, and we should print out 0. Okay. And we're going to go over some more operators before we mess around with the if statement a little bit more. We have the less than, the greater than, the less than or equal to, and the greater than or equal to operators, as well as the not that we'll go over a little bit more detail. Less than, we'll say if one number is less than another number. Greater than, if one number is greater than the other number. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. They just work how you might figure they would work. And the not operator negates is a logical not, which is kind of like a negation operator. So let's say this would be equivalent, not equals to this, or we would say if int1 is equal to 1, but we put a not on the outside, it's basically saying if int1 is equal to 1 not, or if int1 is not equal to 1. Okay? And we'll just see kind of how the less than works. So if int1 is less than 1, we know it's not, so it should skip over and just give us a 5 still. Let's run that. And there we go, we have a 5. If it's greater than 1, now this should evaluate to 0 because it'll jump in here and put that at a 0. And remember that all code will be executed inside the curly braces, so we could have multiple lines of code over here. I could say, for example, int1 is greater than 1. Right? So just to illustrate that you can have multiple lines of code inside of your if statement, we'll run this. Int1 is greater than 1. Awesome. Alright, now I think that's enough of the if statement. Let's go with the else statement. Now the else statement is very useful. It looks just like the if statement, except there's nothing over here. Every else has to go to a matching if. You cannot have else by itself. So it's saying if int1 is greater than 1, do this, else do this. If it's not greater than 1, basically. If it's not greater than 1, then we can say print f int1 is not greater than 1. Okay. So let's make int1 negative 1. So this will go here and say negative 1 is greater than 1. No, it's not. Okay, it'll jump to the else and execute this line of